Welcome to The Simple Actor.
Hey everybody, I'm Shanti Schuler-Irving and welcome to The Simple Actor. Today we are very excited to talk to Mikayla Bartholomew. There's so many things that she's doing right now, it's hard to encapsulate it down to like one or two, but if I could throw out two big ones. Mikayla just recently won a special Tony Award in 2020 for her advocacy and activism work with the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. And she is currently one of the young stars in the feature film King Richard, starring Will Smith. And it is a fabulous film that is literally this morning watching it with my daughter. She said, I want to play tennis, mommy. So this is the kind of work Mikayla is doing. And I'm proud to know her as one of my former students, but she's out there doing big things all on her own. So we're going to talk to Mikayla today. So thank you for joining us, Mikayla.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored.
Of course. So I want to jump in and start kind of from the beginning, because as a professor of a lot of young actors, especially in BFA programs who are looking to get out there to the big world, they want to know how you did it. But I always like to start from the beginning because we all know it's a journey. We all know that there's a lot of real that goes on. But as we kind of jump in, I want to throw out something from your website that I loved that you talked about. And you said, to be Black and a woman all at once in a public space, that's the revolution I'd like to be a part of. And for me, just thinking back to knowing you, I remember that crystallizing for you. This is the work I want to do. So how did that begin? Can we begin?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for starting there. I think a lot of it began with my mom and my baby sister. My father is incredible, but he was in the military. He actually just retired a few years ago after serving for over 30 years. And so a lot of growing up was just me, my mom, and my little sister, because he would do his deployments on his own. And my mom was such a public figure in my life, but also was such a public figure in our community. And I never really knew what I was looking at. I just knew it was like, my mom, she's the best volunteer. And she's always winning all these PTA awards and volunteer of the year and stuff. I just thought mom. But what I think I learned as I got older is like, actually what she was doing was pretty revolutionary as a Black woman in the South, living in a community that she wasn't raised in, trying to take care of everybody, trying to make sure everybody felt seen, felt heard. And I think in deciding to study theater, which was a pretty revolutionary choice for someone who thought they were going to be an obstetrician gynecologist, I kind of had to make a pretty conscious decision that, and pretty early once I was in college, what kind of stories I wanted to tell. And I wanted to tell stories about people who looked like me without having to pretend I don't look the way I do. So often they'd be like, oh, like, color doesn't matter. Let's like be colorblind and stuff. It's like, no, when I walk into a room, I am a Black woman. And it didn't really matter to me growing up because I didn't know what I was looking at. And now that I do, I would really love to center that in my experience so that maybe people who also did not get the chance to see that in their youth, they can feel centered, they can feel seen, they can be heard as well. So yeah, I think it started with my mama and just watching her just be a Black woman in a public space. She's like a hometown celebrity for me, so.
Cool. And I want to get to a conversation that I remember you and I having. It's a conversation I ruminated over the past year or two in college, but I even want to kind of still go backwards to what was the moment that you were like, theater? When did that happen?
That's fair. It was actually kind of late in the game. I really started doing theater on like not intentionally at all. I think I was in Annie Jr. Shout out to Annie Live. All of my friends just did such an incredible job last night. And Selena Smith is a star. But I did Annie Jr. and they split the role of Grace between myself and like a really dear friend of mine. And I thought that was cool, but I wasn't like, oh, theater,
Yeah.
It was just something.
So what did it?
Cool. It was my second year of college. So we're already a year in, I was already a year into my BFA major, and I was still studying pre-nursing and pursuing my minor in gender studies. And I kind of sat down with my mom and dad, and I was like, I actually think I could do this professionally. And my dad was like, what's up? And I was like, yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I think I'm going to focus only on theater. So once I finished my prerequisites for pre-nursing and my minor, I was just like, yeah, I'm only doing theater from here on out. So it came a little late in the game, and it was during a really precarious season in my life. My mother was really sick, and I had just lost my uncle to cancer, and my dad was away. So there was just like so much going on, and I was going to leave the theater program. Not willingly, but because the teachers in our program didn't think I really had the discipline for the art form. And I was like, yeah, no, I disagree, and I would like to stay, and I would like to do this for good. And so that kind of just turned that switch, and I got pretty hardcore real fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I met you, you were a senior. And so you were kind of leading a lot of the theater things on campus. You were kind of one of the, people out there leading the charge, and the students that were really into it, but still. And we had like a crazy bonding moment over something dealing with peanuts. I'll just say that. I mean,
I was just telling the story yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
It was just, I was drawn to so many of you and your cohorts. But yeah, we had some moments where I was just like, what do you want to do? And I feel like even as a senior, you were still wrestling with, can I do this out there?
Yeah.
And there was a moment to where you didn't know if you could apply to grad school or you were going to, and you were like, maybe I'll go back to Norfolk. And I was like, Mikayla, no. Do you remember that?
I do.
In the office? And I was like, Mikayla, Norfolk, or maybe let's talk about this. And we started having that conversation, and you ended up applying to grad school, getting into one, being a backup at Yale, and having these great opportunities. And then you go out to showcase, get an agent. And we had those conversations about, do I go out and just do it? Or do I get more training? What do these two paths look like? And we had a lot of those conversations. So do you remember that time, and kind of looking back on that, can you talk to students who are wrestling with that, of saying, I think I'm good. I think I'm ready to do it, but I don't know how, or maybe I'll just go home.
Absolutely. That's so, it feels very divine having this conversation, because quite literally last night, I was surrounded by all of the Yaleys that, ended up getting in while I was watching from afar on the wait list. But all of them, like, we've all kind of remained like in touch and like friends and stuff like that. And for me, I think, thank God for you, and thank God for like the likes of David Tony and Dr. T, because I felt like I was surrounded by so many people who were telling me, no, you can't do this, or you can only do this if you do it a certain way. I'm sorry, I'm getting choked up. But there were these high expectations that I didn't feel like I could meet. These standards for an industry that I didn't really feel like saw me or people who looked like me. And then there was you who was like, no, like there's something there. And like the way in which you choose to pursue this career is completely yours. And you get to choose how you want to do that. You could go to grad school. You want help applying? I got you. And then you helped me apply, for a kid who couldn't even afford to look at an application. And then when I got signed, I was like, I didn't know whether or not the safety net of school, because I excel in academia. I know I do. If that was what I was looking for, because I was like, okay, let's be safe. Let's make sure I do this the right way so that I can prove all these other people wrong. And then there was this open door that was just like, or do you want to try? And I feel like we all deserve an opportunity to try and bet on ourselves. It's just really hard to take that bet when we're not surrounded by people who are pouring into us. And so what I would say to people who are wrestling with that decision as to whether or not you can do it, to just jump in the field, the industry and stuff, is surround yourself with people who will offer you guidance, support, counsel, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for, you. I wouldn't be.
Thank you. That's giving me too much credit. You were already doing the thing.
Well,
We
thank
just were like, go. Let's
like
try
that
it. Let's try it.
encouragement- Yeah, that encouragement and that like little whisper in the back of my head, I think was really important, because for most of the 4 years I was at my alma mater, thankful for everything that it did instill in me and gave me. But there wasn't a lot of try it, and so listen to the people who want to instill in you positive encouragement, feedback, that want to challenge you to do the thing that scares you. Because I was very scared and did not want to move to New York at all. Had no interest. And now I've been here for like almost 5 years. And it's not going too terribly. So I would say bet on yourself and try it. So
yeah, that's great. And even in that experience, there's adversity, right? Like nothing is, monolithic in terms of it was all great and great people. Like even you and I had a conversation, I remember, in some sort of audition class, and we'll talk about this a little more too in the advocacy piece and your activism, where you clearly said in class one day, I was asking, where do you guys want to go, which markets and what stories you want to tell? And you were like, I want to tell stories about Black people doing things. And I remember saying something to the effect of, well, you're just going to have to still be open, like maybe you can't do that all the time. And like, I remember saying that, and literally the past year and a half, I was like, wow, like I was still that person who was a little bit like, that's great, Mikayla, but that's not, you have to be more open than that.
Right.
And I went back and I was like, I want to kick that, whatever, 2000, whatever year that was me, because you were so crystal clear and like, I'm not going to ever shy back from that's who I am and the stories I want to tell. And you were sitting in that classroom, you looked at me and you were like, okay, Shantae. But I realized that you were also just like, that is what I'm going to do. If I'm going to be out there, that is what I'm going to do. And I'm so proud that you didn't shrink back from that at all, despite me, having that moment, and whoever else might have those moments with you. So I'm so proud of you for that. So grad school versus the business, because a lot of students I work with now are trying to make that choice. What did you choose?
Well, I chose business.
Yes, you did. What did that look like?
I chose business. It looked like, and it looks like poor, and that's okay. That's okay. I am healthy and wealthy in other places. But yeah, no, I mean, it's really, really hard. Yeah. But I remember at one point or another, we were on set filming a scene in King Richard, and I was talking to Mr. Goldwyn, who is like, such a, kind, encouraging human being. And I was talking to him about grad school and how I had deferred. And I can't even call it deferring anymore. I didn't go back.
I did the same thing at the Actors Studio. I was like, I'll be back in a year and never
return. Yeah, I didn't even show up. But I was like, yeah, no, I had actually, right when I got in King Richard, I was getting my stuff together to do auditions for grad school again. And I couldn't do, obviously, the audition process because I had to go out to California. But I was telling Mr. Goldwyn, I feel like I should go to grad school because I need more training. And he was like, what do you mean you're in grad school right now? And I was like, huh? And he was like, look around. You're studying. This is training. This is the work. This is what it looks like. Keep doing this. And I was like, well, I wish it was that easy, Mr. Goldman.
Nice for you to say.
So good
with your many seasons of TV shows.
Mr.
Movies.
MGM. But when he said that, I was like, oh, no, he's absolutely right. Like, this is school. The business is also school.
Yes.
Auditioning is school. taking these one-off classes with acting coaches that you like just because you really appreciate their work, that is school. I'll get turned away from all kinds of auditions because I don't have an MFA. And I'm like, that's fine, but I do have a lot of training because I've been working consistently for the last 5 years. And so, yeah, I did choose the business, and it's really, 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 really hard. But I think it's really, really, really hard in school too. I have friends that just graduated from Yale that are out here struggling like we're all in the same thing. It's just a matter of another diploma. And if that's someone's path, that's somebody's path. I really thought it was going to be mine. There are days where I'm still like, well, now that Yale is free, should I might get in, I know a couple people now. And I'm like, but maybe that's just not my path. And so I'm really excited that I was able to kind of like jump out of what I felt was my safety net, because I really liked being in school, and did the thing that scared me. So yeah, I would say actually choose the thing that scares you. Don't go to grad school if you're not ready.
And if it's like you said, if it's not your path, and similarly, I wanted to go to grad school, and then because I said that's what people do, that's where all these amazing actresses that I know, that's how they got out there. And then I got to grad school and I was like, wait a minute, I just want to be out there right now. This is not my passion to be in the classroom. And in the classroom, I got to meet some super cool people, like having Sidney Poitier walk into a room with Lloyd Richards and being like, this is just a day at school, like that's cool. But I talked to you, I remember we had this conversation about, Mikayla, there's kind of these opportune windows of time, right? And those are different for every person, and they come at different times in your life. And sometimes there's just a window or door that opens up and you're like, I get to choose, but this door won't always be here. It may be a different door or look different down the road, but sometimes there's just moments where it's time. And for me, when I was in New York at the Actors Studio, I remember saying, I just want to be out there. I could walk down the street and go to audition, and who cares if I don't get it? But I have this opportunity right now. And I hit, right? Like I hit, and I left school because that was the path that I was really desiring at the time. And then later I came back and said, now I'm shifting. My life is different. I want to teach. Now that makes sense. But everything is different for every person. And that's the key to trust that,
I think so too. There was other than the tiny voices I was surrounded by, in school encouraging me, because at one point or another, school just seemed like that was the right next step. And I got into like my number one choice, and I got into a whole bunch of other schools, and I got waitlisted at Yale on my first try. That's pretty solid. But it was one of those things where I was like, oh, but here's another door that you never really imagined opening for you that is open, and it's wide open. Is it going to be scary? Is it probably going to be hard? Did you plan for this? Not necessarily. Do you know what's going to be on the other side of this door? No. But that opportune window of time is the thing that kept coming up in conversations with you and with other instructors, where it's like, maybe school's not, for you, your path. Maybe you can try it right now. I remember one of my teachers, David Tony, he was like, the industry's really liking fried chicken right now, and they want it hot. And I was like, this is a very strange metaphor, sir. But if I'm the fried chicken, I was like, if I'm the fried chicken, I'm interested in seeing what the industry tasted like. So I chose the business, and I'm grateful that I did. I am.
Great. And just before we hop into like your activism, can we talk for real for the actors out there who are literally like on the edge? Same thing. I don't know what to do. What does working and being poor simultaneously look like? Because I would always have people see me do stuff and they'd be like, you're doing it. And I'm like, but I'm still trying to pay rent, even though you saw me on the thing. Like, tell them what that looks like for real, not just the pretty pictures and not just the moment where you're in a show or on TV and you're like, I saw that episode. And you're like, great. And I'm still paying stuff off of it, like that paycheck. Tell them the real.
I'm not even gonna lie. I went into debt filming King Richard. Like I went into a lot of debt that I'm still paying back.
Yeah.
Just because like, I mean, it looks great on Instagram, but like it's so expensive to be a part of this industry. And we don't, the pay is not what we think it is
No.
before we get there. So yeah, it looks a lot like I spend so much time at home because I'm like, yeah, shoot, I can't even afford to get on the train right now. Or like I get to go see shows when I know I'm getting a comp because of the work that I do. Other than that, I can't really afford to invest in things other than my headshots, so it looks like a lot of biding your time, and trying to save for the things that you think are going to like help you do the work that you would love to do, which means taking a lot of time to kind of be like, what kind of work do I want to do and what can I afford to do? And I've done a lot of work that I love and not gotten paid a lot for it. And that's okay with me because I'm very, my mom and dad, they were like, oh, wow, you really are an actor now. And I'm like, yes, at this point, I think we can say that. And I'm still struggling to pay rent.
Yep.
I spent so much time away from home the last few months because I was trying to avoid paying utility bills.
Yeah.
And that's the real of it. I think for me is understanding like it might look really nice on the outside, but the struggle is real on the inside. And being transparent about that, I think helps people understand that they're not in it alone.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's so many times. I mean, your artist friends who are in it with you, like when I lived in the East Village, we'd all meet up. And I had a great friend from NYU, Eddie Gathegi, and he graduated. And when I was waitlisted at NYU, we stayed friends. He like slept on my couch many times. And he'd be like doing TV shows and be on like, everything and movies. And he'd be like, can I crash your couch?
Yes,
When we go get coffee, we're like, can we afford that latte? I don't know.
Like young lady who styled me for the premiere, she and I used to split coffees from 7-Eleven when we were going to church because we couldn't afford to have one each,
Yes. And I'm like, if people only really knew, and especially when you come from, smaller towns or places that aren't like the hubs, and they really just see those moments where they're like, you did the thing. And I'm like, yeah. And I still have to carry my laundry to the laundromat.
Someone was just like, I think a family member was like, oh, shoot, Mikayla, she big time now. She should pay off the family's house. And I was just like, ha, 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 ha.
Yeah.
What do you think we get paid for this stuff?
And then you're always paying out as an actor. And I just did like this great talk with a lovely actress here in LA. And she's like, and being a Black actress is more expensive than being a white actress, because she just went in, and I'm like, yes, yes, and yes. It's just true.
It is. It really is. It's like there's like this certain novelty of being a person of color in this industry, particularly right now. Where it's like you have to figure out how to always be on or have the capacity to get there in a very short period of time. And, for so long, I didn't really want to buy into that. And I'm really frustrated, like with an industry that's like forces you to, so that you can buy out of it. But it really, it's like we're treated like a novelty, and we have to invest in ourselves as such. Which
it's still like the Black tax, just in a different way.
Precisely. There's the Black tax and the pink tax all at the same time.
All at the same time. All of it. All of it. And there's so much to say on that. But it's a lot of your work, and again, your passion and just who you are, has kind of culminated in what you do with the Broadway Advocacy Coalition. And of course, after George Floyd's murder and everything that happened in 2020, you guys came out for full force. So can you tell me about the organization, how you got involved, how it's developed over this really incredible time, and where you hope it goes?
Yeah, absolutely. The Broadway Advocacy Coalition essentially is a group of, lawyers, artists, community advocates, people who are directly impacted by systems of racism and the institution of racism as a whole, kind of fighting to combat that and finding ways we can use art to influence policy. And it started in 2016, and I got involved, I want to say in 2018 or 2019, simply because I sent a DM to one of the founders because I saw that they had hosted like a interest meeting kind of, and I was away in Florida doing a Doll's House Part 2, but I was like, I would like to apply to this. Would that be okay? And Amber was like, yes, sis, absolutely. And what I did was I submitted my grant proposal from my senior year, where I essentially, I applied for a grant to direct the world premiere of a show.
I remember that. I remember that grant. Yeah.
Yeah. And I submitted that grant proposal essentially as like a show of the work that I had never really had a name for. Because the idea of it was like, it was an art installation that was also raising money for Black Lives Matter, that was also shining a light on the history of a well-known activist in the Black community that's forgotten in much of history, Medgar Evers. And it was all of these things, and I just didn't know really what I was doing, but I knew I really cared about it.
You did.
And so that ended up being essentially what BAC is, right? They're taking art and the stories of real life people and bringing them to people who can enact change, who can change policies, who put policies into place without actually thinking about the people that they're going to impact. It's always about looking at those who are at the centermost, like nexus of a problem that is impacted by it the most directly, and asking them, what do you think the solution you need is? And why is that not the conversation that they have on Capitol Hill or at the state capitals or, in town hall meetings? Why aren't they listening to the people who are actually being harmed by so much of the legislation that exists? And so BAC, I mean, we're working with carceral systems, because I got involved with BAC before theater was any part of our focus. It was just kind of a tool. And I get to facilitate courses at Columbia Law School, like I'm qualified to do that, and kind of talk about how we can create theaters of change in our communities. And I thought it was a really cool way to kind of acknowledge, one, I am a transplant in a rapidly, always rapidly gentrifying city, to actually be in conversation with the folks who I like, whose communities I live in. And how can I use my tools as an artist and as someone who like proclaims to be an activist to give, I hate saying to give voice, because everyone has a voice. It's a matter of who's listening or who's willing to listen to them.
And who elevates them. It's elevating the voice.
Exactly. Like how can we, and I think that's what's cool about BAC. It's all about building bridges and being essentially an elevator, being a coalition to bring people together and say, yo, like, I got this over here. Is there a way I can help you with what I got? Or like, hey, I also need this thing over here. Is there someone in our community that can help us out? Is there a way we can amplify something? So that's kind of how I got involved with BAC. That's what, we do. And, once I got back from LA and things were starting to kind of pop off in the streets with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Nina Pop, Breonna Taylor, I just shot a text message. I was like, I know we're about to do something, so just let me know what it is. And we all hopped on a call not even 24 hours later. And we were like, we have to bring back Broadway for Black Lives, because all of these theaters started announcing like, we stand in solidarity.
Yeah. So
all of us were just like, huh?
Yeah.
Since when? Because I remember D. Watts was in a conversation, was just like, the day George Zimmerman was acquitted, he was like, we could barely stand and we had to go out on stage and perform a show. And no one asked how we were doing. Nobody asked if we were okay. Nobody cared, And so it was like, how do we give voice to the fact that the very thing we've been doing in all of these other spaces, like there's a lot of work that we need to do in our home space, in our industry
course.
space.
Yes.
You know, why did I learn how to cornrow my hair? Because I was scared I was going to lose a job if I didn't know how to prep my own hair. You know, I've never really been able to, I remember on King Richard, we were trying to negotiate hair and makeup consultation because I'd had experiences where I was either left out back, had to pay for my own hair, had to figure out how to do something that I wasn't qualified or trained to do, simply because no one was there skilled to help me, right? Why is that a common problem?
And it continued to be until people said, oh, wait, now we have to think about that. And I had a talk with a makeup artist who said, and she's a white makeup artist, and she works with a lot of actors and actresses of color. And she says almost every actress of color who sits in my chair has post-traumatic stress from the experiences that they've had with hair and makeup. And I actually feel like it is my job to not only just tell them it's okay, but to listen, and then to make sure I create a safe space just for them to have makeup so they can do their job and feel like I will honor you and your beautiful skin tone and your hair and make sure you feel all that you are, because I know how badly it's been for almost everyone who's been in your position. Exactly. Which is crazy. And it's like 2021.
And like it's crazy that in 2021 or 2020, like King Richard was the first set that I walked onto and I wasn't terrified, because when I went into hair and makeup I was like,
boom, oh thank you,
there are people who look like me in here. And even the people who did not look like me in that film, or were working in hair and makeup and stuff, they were like, oh baby, we got you, we're gonna make sure you look good. And that was one of those things where I had been so scared because the thing that I had asked for in my contract, they weren't able to, Warner Brothers was like, we ain't doing that. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. It's my first movie. I understand.
I'll make it work.
Well, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I'll make it work, which is what we are forced to do all the time. Lion King on Broadway, thankfully, thank you to a course that we're running at BAC, is starting to make specialty wig caps for their actors, right? But it's like,
which I did not have, and I had to ask for when I was at the Lion King, because I was like, this wig cap is pulling out my hair. Can someone please? And I had to give props to the folks that were in hair and makeup. Then they were like, we got you, Shantae. But it was kind of DL because I had to ask, because my hair was I was like, it's killing me. And it's not big enough.
And this is just one of the many problems that exist in this industry. Can't even get to the microaggressions that exist, some of the blatant racism that exists, some of the blatant discrimination and the disparities in how we're treated versus our white peers. And I think we just kind of wanted to have a conversation about it. And so we organized the Broadway for Black Lives Matter again forum. And I want to say we planned it and set it up in 48 hours. And it turned into this huge 3-day forum. And, we're in this season of, transition for sure, because BAC is kind of, growing and expanding, trying to figure out what is the work that we want to center? How can we continue helping our community and helping our own, and understanding our community is filled with our own. And it's just really cool to kind of figure out what that looks like.
And it's beautiful to watch. And I remember that 3-day, it was incredible. It was incredible what you guys put together. And I want to let people know, especially since we have you here, one, there's amazing resources. BAC has amazing conversations, but how does, I'm a professor who teaches, now I'm in LA, but before I wasn't in a major hub again, New York, LA. How do we filter down all that good stuff BAC is doing, take the content that you give us, and then filter that down to our own communities and build our own coalitions? Because all of these conversations are pertinent, but we're not all on Broadway right now, and we're not all in New York, right? So how do we filter that down to my university, to my town, to my theater community, wherever I am? Because a lot of people say that's amazing, but that feels out of reach.
I get that. Something that I'm very adamant at BAC, like with BAC, about is that we cannot just be like, Broadway can be in our name all day long, but the industry goes beyond that, and so does our work. You know, Broadway, if anything, is just a magnifying glass on what is happening in the regional theaters, the community theaters, the educational institutions. And so it's like these same conversations that we're having with the Broadway industry should like often reflects a mirror of what's happening in smaller markets.
Yes.
So it's like, how can we ensure that these conversations are accessible? And I think one of the coolest things that BAC does is like, we're very open with our emails and stuff. It's like, if someone has a question or wants to like bring in a facilitator or get facilitation training, it's like, shoot us an email and like, we got you. You know, that's why the Miseducation Forum was so important to me, because I was just like, we can't just talk about Broadway as if like it's not affecting these kids who go to not just Yale and Juilliard, but the kids that go to VCU and
or the kids in, I was just in Oklahoma, and the Bible students there were like, please, like, give us stuff, you know, like we're going places, we want to be out there, but we're here right now, you know, like it's real.
And I think that's why the word coalition is so vital, because it's like, we have to be in community with everyone and not just the people who we feel like are at the top tier that we look at. Like, how can we work from the bottom up? Because that's how we start enacting actual change in the industry, is when we start paying attention to the things that aren't all shiny and bright, because those issues still exist and they start from like at the community level. So like, how can we start disrupting those cycles? And so, yeah, like building, I know I've brought BAC work to my alma mater and just been like, hey girl, you could use this. Or just reaching out and being like, yo, if you guys need anything coalition wise. I remember a young lady was, I think in a Zoom session, and was talking about her experience as a student at I believe Marymount, Manhattan. And I was like, wow, I know an alma mater, like an alumni from there. Her name is Adrienne Warren. Let me connect you. And Adrienne was like, let me be your mentor, you know? And so it's figuring out how to like take the resources that you have access to and giving them away to other people. Because I'm grateful for the resources I had, but I didn't have a lot of them. You know, I didn't have access to an alumni network until my senior year, when I met an alum for the first time. And so it's like, how can we interrupt those cycles where we feel so disjointed and disconnected, to open those lines of communication and give into the spaces that we didn't have access to before?
Yes, yes.